When you hear talk of someday in the future, the world will soon run out of oil. When someone hears the phrase, running out of oil, what comes to mind for you? What comes to mind for most is the 1979 film, Mad Max. This movie was made during the energy crisis of the late 1970s. The crisis was in part largely due to the Iranian Revolution. This created geopolitical instability, particularly in the Middle East. But since the United States was the world's largest economy, it was the most affected by this. One reason was the dollar. The dollar is the world's reserve currency. The dollar internationally gets its value from the oil trade. The new Iranian regime was no longer on friendly terms with America. Now someone might ask, why did America, a country rich in oil, need to depend on Middle East oil? That was due to nearly a decade early. This was a peak in conventional oil. This is known as peak oil. A peak in both production and discoveries of oil. In the late 1950s, a geologist predicted that by around 1970, there would be a peak in American conventional oil. This period of the early 70s saw the end of the gold standard. From then on and to this day, the dollar or petrodollar is the global reserve currency. Since the dollar was now a fiat currency, the United States could now print money to buy foreign oil. The decade of the 70s was known for inflation. When most people think of inflation, they think of everything going up. But what's really going up is oil. Since just about everything in our modern industrial economy is made from oil or is dependent on fossil fuels, the price of oil by the end of the decade reached a high of $35 per barrel of oil. This would be about $115 in today's dollars. Another way of looking at oil prices was oil in 1979 was about 1/20th of an ounce of gold. Yes, it may have been high in terms of dollars. This is the historic average of oil prices in terms of gold. The true high for oil in terms of oil prices, priced in gold, was in the mid-2000s. Now, what comes to mind when someone thinks of oil in this period of time? The answer is the Iraq War. Many people believe the true reason for the invasion of Iraq was to control the Iraqis' oil fields. The early 2000s also happened to be when the idea of peak oil in global oil production. This period of the mid-2000s is also known for one other thing: the Great Financial Crisis. In the summer of 2008, oil prices peaked at $150 per barrel. Several economists believe that oil price spiking led to the Great Recession. During the Great Recession, price dropped from all-time highs to nearly $40 by the spring of 2009. Now fast forward to the present day. We have geopolitical conflicts with oil-producing countries. Europe now is dependent on Russian oil, is now facing an energy crisis due to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, resulting in an energy crisis in Europe. When someone hear the phrase energy crisis, thoughts of the Mad Max movie comes to mind. The movie was merely a fiction scenario. A scenario of a world with little to no oil. When it comes to the term peak oil, they say we will never run out of oil. But they're missing the point. Currently, the world uses more than 30 billion barrels of oil per year. It's been estimated that the proven oil reserves are equal to about 50 years of oil left at current demand rates. Yes, more oil may be in the ground yet to be discovered. But at what price? The end of cheap oil is not some Mad Max type event. But when is the time to transition to either a different economic system or an alternative energy sources? Some say renewables are the solution, but they're dependent on fossil fuels in their productions. Now here is a thought experiment. Let's just say the figures of only 50 years of oil are correct. The time to act will not be 40 from now or even 30 years from now. This is something that will take an entire generation or more. Most of you watching this will say, someday there will be a technological solution to this. But it's not that simple. Our current economic system driven by growth, which means we will use resources at an increasing rate. Whether you believe in peak oil or climate change, the real problem is change. People don't want to change. They have been living in a paradigm of infinite growth for 50 years. This growth was driven by cheap energy. This is not some Mad Max or doomsday prediction, but something we most soon confront before it's too late. In 2020, the pandemic showed how fragile our global economy is. In recent years, some of the biggest core have made pledges to be carbon neutral by as late as 2050. The mid to late 21st century will be a century of energy decline. The previous century saw an era of cheap and abundant energy. Whether you believe in climate change or believe there is hundreds of years of oil, our current economic system cannot go on forever. The available resources are just not there. Some have said climate change is our generation's World War II. During that time, people made sacrifices. There are solutions to climate change and resource depletion. The solutions are not in some new tech, but change in our behavior. Ideas have been proposed such as Green New Deal. A Green New Deal on a global level would require a global tax of the top 1%. Most of the people watching this video would be part of the top global 1%. When it comes to the topic of climate change and sustainability, maybe the solution is less is more. Less things, less globalization and less growth. This requires a real commitment to change. This idea of a Mad Max world without oil is not happening soon. But this is how we as humans have been thinking, like this is part of the problem. We wait until something at our front door to begin doing something about it. Something you can do is subscribe to my channel and check out my other related videos on this subject in the link in the description. Also, leave a comment and tell me what you think of this topic.